When a 23-year-old parking cars for $18 an hour pointed at a silver Ferrari and told the driver to move it, he had no idea he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. Or maybe the best decision. It was a warm Tuesday evening in Austin, Texas. March 14, 2023. The kind of night where the air is soft and the city is buzzing and nothing feels like it's about to change. Marcus Delgado was 2 hours into his shift. He had parked 11 cars. He had made $34 in tips. He had eaten a gas station sandwich on his break and spent most of it thinking about his little brother's doctor appointment on Thursday and the $14,200 his family owed in medical bills. He was just a guy doing his job. Then a silver Ferrari rolled into the one lot he was hired to protect. No exceptions, no excuses. His supervisor had been crystal clear. It didn't matter who pulled up, that lot stayed empty. So Marcus walked up to the window. He didn't look at the face first. He never did. He looked at the car, then the plates, then the face. And his stomach dropped straight through the ground. He recognized the man immediately. The jaw, the tired eyes, the plain black jacket like it came off a regular store rack. He had seen this face on the internet 1,000 times, had watched his company launch events like other kids watch sports. It was Elon Musk, the richest man on the planet, sitting in a Ferrari, in the lot Marcus was hired to protect. For 2 whole seconds, Marcus's mind went completely blank. The medical bills, the rules, his little brother, all of it, gone. Then something took over. Not courage, not stupidity, something deeper than both. He straightened his jacket. He looked Elon Musk directly in the eyes, and he said 6 words that would follow him for the rest of his life. "Sir, you can't park there." Elon didn't yell, didn't argue, didn't make a scene. He just looked at Marcus with a quiet, private smile. The kind of smile that belongs to a person who knows something you don't. And that something? It was about to change Marcus Delgado's entire life forever. Because what Marcus didn't know, what nobody bothered to tell the young valet standing guard over that parking lot every single night, was that the building he was protecting, the ground he was standing on, the very lot he had just defended with everything he had, Elon Musk had signed the deed 18 months ago, and Marcus had just told the owner of the building he couldn't park in his own lot. And now, somewhere inside that building, 3 security cameras had recorded every single second of it. What happened next, in the following 48 hours, is something nobody saw coming. Not Marcus, not his family, not the millions of people who were about to watch that video and feel everything all at once. But here is the part that will really get you. The reason Marcus held that rule, the real reason, the one he never told anyone, not even Elon Musk himself, was something he kept locked away in a place nobody could see. And when you find out what was happening in his life just 46 minutes before that Ferrari pulled up, you are going to understand that this story was never really about a parking lot. It was about a family, a sick little brother, a mother who ironed shirts at midnight and never once complained, and a young man who had absolutely nothing left to stand on except the person he was raised to be. Stay with us for the whole video, because the moment the truth comes out, you will not see it coming. Marcus Delgado had never once in his life touched a Ferrari. Not even close. The closest he had ever come to anything like that was the time he was 12 years old and a black Corvette rolled slowly through his neighborhood in Valet, Texas. Bass thumping, windows down, and Marcus had pressed his hand flat against the warm metal of the door as it idled at a stop sign. The driver had looked at him, not angry, just surprised. And Marcus had pulled his hand back like he'd touched a stove. That was it. That was his whole relationship with expensive cars before March 14th. 2023. Del Valle is not the Austin you see in travel magazines. It sits about 11 miles southeast of downtown, past the airport, past the industrial stretch along Highway 71. The roads crack every summer from the heat and fill with water every spring from the rain. The corner store on Elroy Road sells cold drinks out of a chest freezer, and the man behind the counter knows everyone by name. People there work hard and talk straight, and don't have much patience for nonsense. Marcus had grown up in a small tan house on Decker Lane, with his mother, Rosa, and his younger siblings, Lucia and Thomas. Rosa worked double shifts as a nurse's aide at St. David's Medical Center on East 32nd Street in Austin. She drove 40 minutes each way. She never complained about it. Not once. Not in front of the kids. Though Marcus had heard her sitting alone in the kitchen late at night, very quiet, in the specific silence of a person trying to hold themselves together. His father had left when Marcus was 9. There was no dramatic story attached to it. One morning, the man was there. Then he wasn't. Rosa had simply adjusted, the way people adjust to a missing tooth. You learn where not to press. Marcus was the oldest. That meant something in the Delgado house. It meant you carried things without being asked to. Lucia was 17, fast-talking and brilliant, already filling out applications for UT Austin with the focused energy of someone who had decided the world owed her a shot, and she was going to collect. Marcus believed she would get everything she wanted. He believed it without jealousy, the way you believe in weather. Tomas was 11, small for his age, funny in the quiet, sideways way that catches you off guard. He'd say something so sharp you'd laugh 3 seconds later, like the joke needed travel time. 4 months before that Tuesday in March, Tomas had been diagnosed with juvenile dermatomyositis, a rare autoimmune disease that attacked the muscles from the inside. It left him tired in ways that an 11-year-old should never be tired. It left him puffy from medications that cost more than Rosa earned in a week. The number on the refrigerator, written in Rosa's careful, looping handwriting on the back of an envelope, said $14,200. That was what they owed, combined, accumulated across 4 months of specialist visits, lab work, medications, and one overnight hospital stay in November that the insurance company had partially denied and was currently under review, which Marcus had learned was insurance language for "don't hold your breath." He had dropped out of Austin Community College 6 months earlier, engineering track. He'd been doing well, genuinely well, the kind of well that makes professors remember your name. But the math at home hadn't worked anymore, and Marcus was good enough at math to understand that clearly. The valet job at the Terrace at Domain Northside paid $18 an hour plus tips. On busy nights, Friday, Saturday, sometimes a Thursday when there was an event, the tips from tech executives and investors who floated through the Domain like well-dressed clouds could add another $80, sometimes $100. Was the quiet sedans? The men in there was the quiet sedans. The men in their 50s who drove sensible things and had nothing to prove, who folded 20s like they were nothing. His supervisor was a stocky, humorless man named Gerald Fitch, who wore a company polo one size too tight and ran the valet operation like it was a military installation. On Marcus's first day, Gerald had given him the rules on a laminated card, and then repeated the most important one out loud anyway, standing in the middle of Lot B with his arms crossed. This lot is reserved. No public parking. No exceptions. I don't care if it's the governor of Texas standing in front of you. you redirect them to the main entrance. You let one car through, corporate hears about it. Not and we all go home. Understood? Marcus had understood. He needed this job. He needed it in the specific, non-negotiable way that people need things when someone they love is sick, and the number on the refrigerator doesn't go down on its own. On the evening of March 14, 2023, Marcus Delgado was 2 hours into his Tuesday shift. The spring air was warm and soft, the way Austin gets in mid-March. Not quite summer yet, still forgiving. He had parked 11 cars. He had made $34 in tips. He had eaten a gas station sandwich on his break and thought about Tomas's next appointment on Thursday. Then, the silver Ferrari turned into the entrance of Lot B, and everything changed. The Ferrari didn't roar. That was the first thing Marcus noticed. He had expected noise, the kind of aggressive, to-look-at-me engine sound that certain men used like a megaphone. But the SF-90 Straydale rolled in almost quietly, its hybrid system doing most of the work at low speed, the way a very confident person enters a room without announcing themselves. Silver paint, factory finish, not a scratch on it. The kind of clean that costs money just to maintain. Marcus was already moving before the car fully stopped. Muscle memory. 11 cars into his shift, his body knew the routine. Walk to the driver's side, smile, redirect if necessary, stay professional, stay calm. Gerald's laminated rules were practically tattooed on the inside of his eyelids by now. He didn't look at the face first. He never did. He looked at the car, then the plates, then the face. That was his habit. A small system he'd built for himself to stay grounded when wealthy people made him feel like furniture. Silver Ferrari, Texas plates, clean. Then he looked up. The recognition didn't crash over him all at once. It came in pieces. The jaw first, then the slightly heavy-lidded eyes, then the particular stillness of a man who had been photographed 10,000 times and had made peace with being watched. A plain black jacket, no jewelry, no effort to impress anyone. Marcus's brain said the name before his mouth could form any words. Elon Musk. For exactly 2 seconds, he would remember those 2 seconds for the rest of his life. Marcus's mind went completely blank. The $14,200. Gerald's rules. Tomas's Thursday appointment. All of it dissolved. Then training took over. He stepped forward, one hand raised politely. Cian said what he had been hired to say. "Sir, I'm sorry. Lot B is reserved. I can direct you to the main valet entrance. It's just around the... This is fine, right here." The voice was calm, certain, not rude, but carrying the quiet weight of a man who was not accustomed to being redirected. Marcus held his ground. His heart was hammering, but his voice came out steady, which surprised even him. "I understand, sir, but my supervisor is very specific about this lot. No exceptions. If I could just ask you to pull around to the..." "I think it's all right," Elon said again. Slightly firmer this time, still not angry, just sure of himself. "Sir." Marcus straightened, shoulders back, eye contact. "You can't park there. I'm sorry." A silence followed that felt much longer than it was. Maybe 4 seconds, maybe 5. And the kind of silence where two people are each deciding something about the other. Then Elon Musk did something Marcus had not expected. He nodded, slowly, put the Ferrari in reverse, backed out of Lot B with the same quiet precision he'd entered with, pulled around to the main valet lane, and stopped the engine. He stepped out without drama. Average height, slightly rumpled. He handed his keys to Marcus, not tossing them, actually placing them. and walked toward the building entrance without looking back. Marcus stood holding the keys to a Ferrari that belonged to a man whose net worth at that moment, according to Forbes, was approximately $180 billion. He parked the car. He went back to his station. He parked 3 more cars after that: a Lexus, a BMW, a Range Rover. He made $11 in tips. He did not tell anyone what had happened. Now, what Marcus did not know, could not have known, had no reason to suspect, was that 3 security cameras had recorded the entire exchange. Camera 4B above the entrance gate, Camera 2A mounted on the northeast corner of the building, Camera 7 inside the lobby looking outward through the glass. 15 seconds of clean, time-stamped, high-definition footage. Gerald Fitch reviewed security recordings every Wednesday morning. He came in at 7:45, made his coffee. Black, no sugar, the coffee of a man who had given up small pleasures, sat down at the monitor, and started the previous night's footage at normal speed. He almost missed it. The timestamp read 9:22 p.m. He had been skimming, looking for the usual issues: cars too close together, guests being difficult, staff on their phones. Then he saw the Ferrari. He leaned forward. I watched Marcus walk up, watched the window come down, watched the body language of a 23-year-old valet holding firm against a man Gerald recognized immediately. He watched it 3 times. Then he sat back in his chair and stared at the ceiling for a full minute, doing the kind of thinking that doesn't require moving. He should have logged it, filed it, sent it to corporate through the proper channel. That was the correct procedure. That was what the employee handbook said on page 34, under incidents involving notable persons. Instead, Gerald pulled out his personal phone and texted his friend Danny Reyes, who ran a scrappy Austin entertainment blog called ATX After Dark, with about 4,000 followers and a reputation for posting things that were just interesting enough to share. "Got something for you," Gerald typed, "to post it just for fun." He sent the clip. By Thursday at noon, ATX After Dark had crashed twice from traffic. By Thursday at 3 p.m., the video had been picked up by a Tesla owner's Silicon on X and reshared 80,000 times. By Friday morning, it was sitting at 4.2 million views and climbing, and the clip was running on CNN, BBC Online, the Daily Mail, and had hit the front page of Reddit's r/unexpected with 94,000 upvotes. The comments were extraordinary in their division. "This kid is what integrity looks like. Frame this man." He literally told the owner of the building he can't park in his own lot. "I am deceased. Raise this valet immediately. Treat everyone equally. Full stop. Bro is going viral for being confidently wrong. This is painful to watch. He didn't know. He was just doing his job. Leave him alone." Marcus found out at 12:17 p.m. on Thursday, sitting in his 2009 Honda Civic in the staff parking area, eating a gas station sandwich. Turkey on white, the $2.49 one, when his phone buzzed with a text from Lucia. "Marcus, what did you do?" Below it, a link. He clicked it, watched himself on screen, small, earnest, shoulders squared, telling one of the most powerful men on the planet that he needed to move his car. He watched it twice. Then he put his phone face down on the passenger seat and looked out through the cracked windshield at the parking lot for a very long time. His phone began ringing. Unknown numbers, a local news station, a producer from a morning show in New York whose name he didn't catch because his hands were shaking slightly when he answered, and he hung up before she finished her sentence. On his Instagram, which had 212 followers the night before, mostly family and a few friends from ACC, now showed 14,000 and was rising visibly, like a thermometer held over heat. Strangers were calling him a legend. Strangers were calling him an idiot. Someone had already made a meme. Marcus Delgado turned his phone face down again. He finished his sandwich. Then he went back to work. That evening, a black Chevrolet Suburban with tinted windows pulled into the Domain at 6:45 p.m. A man in a crisp white shirt stepped out, moved with the quiet efficiency of someone who was paid to solve problems before they became problems, and asked the first staff member he saw for Marcus Delgado by name. Marcus was brought over. The man extended a card between two fingers, the way people do when they want the card to speak for itself. Jared Koss, Director of Operations, Musk Holdings Real Estate Division, Austin, Texas. "Mr. Musk would like to meet with you tomorrow morning," Jared said. 9 o'clock. The address is on the back. Marcus looked at the card, then at Jared. "Am I fired?" Jared smiled the careful smile of a man trained never to answer questions he wasn't authorized to answer. "That's not my place to say, Mr. Delgado." The Suburban pulled away. Marcus stood alone in the warm March evening, holding a business card in a parking lot he had been guarding for 6 months, outside a building whose owner he had told, firmly, professionally, and incorrectly, that he couldn't park where he owned the ground beneath him. He turned the card over. An address. 9 a.m. He went home. He didn't sleep. He lay in the dark beside a stack of Tomas's medical paperwork and stared at the ceiling and listened to his little brother's quiet breathing through the thin wall between their rooms. The ceiling offered nothing, but at 8:47 the following morning, Marcus Delgado put on his cleanest shirt, drove his cracked mirror Civic across Austin, and showed up 13 minutes early, because that was who Rosa had raised him to be. The building didn't look like power. That was the first thing Marcus noticed as he pulled into the small lot off Domain Boulevard at 8:47 a.m. He had expected glass and steel and the kind of architecture that announces itself from a distance, the visual equivalent of a firm handshake. Instead, the address on the back of Jared Koss's card had led him to a low, clean, though almost modest commercial building tucked between a row of newer office developments near the north end of the Domain. No signage out front, no logo, just a frosted glass entrance and 2 neat planters on either side of the door, with small green shrubs that had been trimmed into perfect spheres. The kind of building, Marcus thought, that didn't need to impress anyone. The kind that already knew what it was. He sat in his Civic for 4 minutes before going in. He used that time to check his shirt collar in the cracked left mirror, breathe slowly the way Rosa had taught him when he was young and anxious before school presentations, and read the address one more time, as if confirming it might somehow change it. It didn't change. He went in. The lobby was cool and quiet, to the temperature of a place where serious things happened at a measured pace. The floors were pale stone. The furniture was simple and expensive, in the way that only truly expensive things manage, by looking like it wasn't trying. A single large photograph hung on the wall opposite the entrance, an aerial shot of Austin at night. The city spread out below like scattered embers. The Congress Avenue Bridge lit and curving over the dark ribbon of the Colorado River. Marcus stood looking at it for a moment. A woman appeared from a side corridor. Mid-30s, dark hair pulled back neatly, a small earpiece that she touched once before speaking. Her name tag read Priya. "Mr. Delgado?" Her smile was warm but practiced. The smile of someone who had learned to make nervous people feel less nervous without making it obvious that was what she was doing. "Can I get you anything? Water? Coffee?" "Water would be great," Marcus said. "Thank you." She brought it in a real glass, not a plastic cup. He noticed that. He wasn't sure why it mattered, but it did. Something about being given a real glass made him feel like he was being taken seriously before the meeting had even started. He sat in a chair near the window that looked out onto a small enclosed courtyard. A single tree grew in the center of it, young and carefully staked. Marcus watched it for a moment, its leaves catching the early morning light, and thought about nothing in particular, which was unusual for him. At 9:07, footsteps came down the hallway. No jacket, no assistant trailing behind, no jacket, no assistant trailing behind him, no phone visible. He looked, in person and in this light, less like the version of himself that existed online. The memes, the headlines, the Saturday Night Live monologue from May 8, 2021, where he'd stood at the podium and told 12 million viewers he was the first person with Asperger's to host the show, and more like a man who was tired in the particular way that people get tired when they are always thinking. He sat down across from Marcus without ceremony, leaned forward on both elbows, looked at him directly. "Why didn't you let me park there?" No small talk, no preamble. Marcus had half expected some version of an icebreaker, a "how are you?" something to ease into the room. There was none. He answered the way he had answered Gerald's rules on his first day, directly, without decoration. "Because those were my instructions, sir. Lot B is reserved. My supervisor made it clear there were no exceptions. I was following the rules I'd been given." Elon considered this. "Even though you recognized me?" "Yes, sir." "Why?" Marcus paused, not because he didn't have an answer, but because he wanted to give the right one, the true one, not the impressive one. There was a difference, and he sensed, clearly and instinctively, that the man sitting across from him would know which was which. "Because if I move the rules for you," Marcus said slowly, "I have to explain to the next person why I didn't move them for them. How the rule only works if it works for everyone." Something shifted in Elon's expression, not dramatically, just a slight settling, like a door finding its frame. "How old are you?" 23. "What were you doing before the valet job?" "Community college, Austin Community College, Riverside campus, engineering track." "Why'd you leave?" And here, for the first time in the conversation, Marcus paused in a different way. Not thinking, feeling. The question landed somewhere soft and unprotected, the way certain questions do when they are asked plainly by someone who genuinely wants to know. He thought about Thomas, about the blanket on the couch, about the puffy face from the medications, about Rosa in the hospital stairwell on her break, eating granola bars alone in the one place where no one needed anything from her. Family stuff, Marcus said. 2 words, closed door. Elon looked at him for a moment, not pushing, not probing, just acknowledging that the door was there and that Marcus had chosen not to open it, which was his right. He asked several more questions after that. Practical? Specific? Logistical? Did Marcus have any experience managing people? Had he ever dealt with scheduling or vendor coordination? Did he understand anything about facilities operations? Marcus answered honestly each time. Some. No, not professionally, but I learn fast. And did not pretend to know things he didn't know, which felt important. Pretending in this room, in front of this man, felt like the one thing that might actually disqualify him. Then Elon stood, extended his hand across the low table between them. "I'll be in touch," he said. That was all. No offer. I faded, and Marcus was left sitting in the faded, and Marcus was left sitting in the quiet lobby holding a half-empty glass of water, while Priya reappeared and smiled her practiced smile and said she hoped he had a lovely rest of his morning. He thanked her. He meant it. He walked to his Civic, sat down, gripped the steering wheel with both hands, and stared at the frosted glass entrance of the building he had just walked out of. He had no idea what had just happened. He had no idea if it had gone well or terribly, or somewhere in the unreadable middle where most important things tend to land. He started the car, drove back across Austin on Research Boulevard with the windows down and the warm March air coming through. I passed the billboards and the coffee shops and the construction cranes that were always building something new in this city, always converting something old into something that cost more. When he got home, Tomas was on the couch, wrapped in his blanket, watching cartoons with the quiet dedication of a boy who had decided that the world was still worth paying attention to, even when it made his body hurt. He looked up when Marcus came in. "You okay?" he asked. Marcus looked at his little brother. The puffy face, the tired eyes, the blanket pulled up to his chin in the middle of the morning, and felt something large and unnameable move through his chest. "Yeah, buddy," he said. "I think so." He changed out of his button-down shirt, hung it carefully on the back of his door so it stayed clean. Then he went back to work. Afternoon shift. A main entrance. Cars in, cars out. He told no one about the meeting. He parked a Lexus, a Tesla Model S, which felt, under the circumstances, like the universe making a small joke at his expense, and a silver Porsche that a woman in her 60s tipped him $40 for without being asked. He put the $40 in his pocket and thought about Thursday, when Thomas had his appointment, and how much the copay would be, and whether $40 was a sign or just $40. Probably just $40, he decided, but he held on to it anyway. The first week passed the way quiet weeks do when you are waiting for something, slowly during the days, quickly in memory. Marcus went back to Lot B, back to the laminated rules, back to Gerald Fitch's tight polo shirt, and morning briefings about proper key handling and not leaning against the vehicles. Gerald had said nothing more about the incident, about the video, about the meeting with Jared Koss. Corporate had called, apparently, and used the words professional conduct and commendable representation of company values, which had made Gerald briefly and visibly uncomfortable, the way people get uncomfortable when they are praised for something they didn't entirely intend. Marcus got a $1.50 raise. He used the first extra paycheck to send $200 toward Tomas's outstanding balance. The number on the refrigerator changed from $14,200 to $14,000. He stared at it for a moment before breakfast one morning. Really stared at it, the way you stare at a mountain you have to climb. And then made eggs and didn't mention it to anyone. The internet, as it always does, moved on. The video got buried under newer, louder things. A celebrity scandal, then a congressional hearing that everyone watched for 2 days and then forgot. A video of a dog doing something improbable in a supermarket. The memes about Marcus dissolved. The think pieces evaporated. His Instagram had settled at 19,400 followers, a number he didn't know what to do with and mostly ignored. He had not heard from Jared Koss. He told himself, in the careful, rational voice he used when managing his own expectations, that it had been a curiosity. A rich man's brief interest in an unusual moment, the kind of thing that feels significant in the room and means nothing 3 days later. Wealthy people moved through dozens of interactions a week. Why would one valet in one parking lot stay in the mind of a man who was simultaneously running Tesla, SpaceX, and The Boring Company, and had recently been appointed to a significant federal advisory role in early 2025? Though that was still 2 years away from where Marcus stood now, in the plain, ordinary present of late March 2023, he was no one. He was $14,000 on a refrigerator. He was a guy who parked cars. And yet, the question Elon had asked him, "Why didn't you let me park there?" would not leave him alone. Not because he was proud of his answer, not because he was rehearsing it for some future audience, but because sitting with it in the silence of the following days, he had started to feel the question opening up into a larger and more uncomfortable one beneath it. Had it actually been principle? Or had it been fear? He had followed the rule because Gerald had been clear, because losing the job was unthinkable, because the rule was safety, and safety was Tomas's Thursday appointment and the $14,000 on the refrigerator. Was that integrity? Or was it just a man doing what he had to do and calling it something nobler afterward because the nobler version was easier to live inside? He wrote about it. That surprised him. He had never been a writer, had never kept a journal, had abandoned an English composition class at ACC, not because he was bad at it, but because the time had gone somewhere more urgent. But the thoughts needed somewhere to go, and his head wasn't big enough to hold them. So he bought a cheap spiral notebook from the Walgreens on William Cannon Drive and started writing at the kitchen table after everyone else was asleep. 3 pages the first night, then 5, then 8. And the handwriting was messy, and the sentences weren't pretty, but the thinking was honest, which was the only thing that mattered in a document no one else would ever read. He wrote about Rosa, about the way she never explained her sacrifices, never itemized them, never held them over her children like a debt they owed. She simply absorbed what needed absorbing and kept moving, like water, finding its level. He wrote about what it meant to be raised by a woman like that, how it gave you a standard you couldn't unknow, a compass that didn't have an off switch. He wrote about Tomas, who had asked him last week, in the straightforward way that sick children sometimes ask things, whether the medicine was going to keep working. Marcus had said yes. He'd said it with confidence, and the same way he'd told Elon Musk he couldn't park in Lot B, not because he was certain, but because certainty was what the moment required. He wasn't sure if that was courage or just performance. He wrote that down too. The notebook filled up slowly, page by page, in the quiet hours after midnight, while Austin hummed and Tomas slept, and Rosa drove home from St. David's along the dark stretch of Highway 71, her headlights cutting through the spring night, her hands steady on the wheel. On April 3rd, 2023, 20 days after the parking lot, 16 days after the meeting, Marcus was standing in the kitchen making a sandwich when his phone buzzed on the counter. Unknown number. Austin area code. He picked it up on the second ring. Mr. Delgado. The voice was measured, professional, immediately recognizable. "See, this is Jared Koss." Marcus set down the bread, leaned back against the kitchen counter, slid slowly down until he was sitting on the floor with his back against the cabinet and his knees pulled up, the way he used to sit as a kid when something big was happening and he needed to be closer to the ground. "Mr. Koss," he said. His voice came out steadier than he felt. "I remember. Mr. Musk has asked me to extend an offer." The kitchen was very quiet. Through the wall, he could hear the faint sound of cartoons from the living room. Tomas was awake, watching something with gentle music and soft voices. "An offer," Marcus repeated. "For what?" "Operations Coordinator, Domain Northside Property Division. Full-time. Full benefits package. Starting salary of $72,000 per year." Marcus said nothing. He counted the seconds later from memory. 11 of them. 11 seconds of silence on a phone call that had taken 20 days to arrive. "Why?" he finally said. "Mr. Musk found your response during your meeting to be the correct one," Jared said. He values people who hold to principles when there's pressure not to. We'd like you to start in 2 weeks, if the timeline works for you. Marcus looked across the kitchen floor, past the table leg, past Lucia's backpack dropped by the door, to the refrigerator, where the envelope in Rosa's handwriting still held its number against the white surface, with a single magnet shaped like the state of Texas. $14,000. It works, Marcus said. After the call ended, he stayed on the floor. He didn't move for a long time, and he just sat with his back against the cabinet and his knees pulled up and listened to the cartoon sounds through the wall and the distant hum of the refrigerator and the very specific silence of a life that was, slowly and without announcement, beginning to change. He held on to that silence the same way he'd held on to the $40 tip, like it might mean something, like it already did. He called her at 12:34 p.m. He knew her schedule by heart, the way children of working mothers always do. Not because anyone taught them, but because survival requires it. Rosa's lunch break at St. David's Medical Center ran from 12:30 to 1 on weekdays. 30 minutes. She ate whatever she had packed the night before, usually in the stairwell between the second and third floors, the east stairwell specifically. And because the west one smelled like cleaning solution, and the main break room was always too loud with other people's problems when she was trying to quietly manage her own. Marcus had never seen that stairwell, but he knew it existed the way he knew a lot of things about his mother, through the texture of her voice at different hours, through the quality of her silences, through the small geography of her daily life that she had never described, but that he had assembled piece by piece over 23 years of paying attention. She picked up on the third ring. Marcus, slightly alert, he didn't usually call during the day. "Everything okay? Is Tomas?" "Tomas is fine, Mom. Everyone's fine." He paused, breathed. "I have something to tell you." He told her everything. The meeting with Jared Koss, the offer, and the number, $72,000, which he said carefully and clearly. "The way you say a number you are still learning to believe is real." Rosa said nothing for a moment. "Mom, I'm here, baby. Did you hear me?" "I heard you." Her voice had changed. Not broken, not yet, but changed the way a surface changes just before it gives way. A kind of internal shift that happens before anything visible does. "I heard every word." She set something down. He heard the small sound of it. Her lunch, probably, set on the step beside her. He imagined her pressing her back against the cool stairwell wall, the institutional gray paint, the fluorescent light above her humming its single indifferent note. And then Rosa Delgado, who had not cried in front of her children in 4 years, not when her husband disappeared like smoke, and not when the doctor had sat across from her in a small consultation room at Dell Children's Medical Center on North Lamar Boulevard and said the words juvenile dermatomyositis in a careful, practiced voice, not when she had opened the 4th medical bill in a single week and sat at the kitchen table at midnight, doing math that didn't come out right no matter how many times she ran it. Cried. Not loudly. Not in the way that demands attention or frightens children, but quietly, the way certain people cry when the pressure they have been holding for so long finally finds, unexpectedly and without warning, a small opening and moves through it. Marcus heard it and said nothing. He had learned from her that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is simply stay on the line. After a moment, she said, "You did the right thing." "Mom, doing the right thing usually looks like. Doing the right thing usually looks like Marcus. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't feel important while it's happening. You just do the next correct thing and the next one, and the one after that, And somewhere down the line, it turns into something. She paused. That's how it works. That's always how it works. Marcus was sitting on the kitchen floor again. Same cabinet, same linoleum, same view of the refrigerator with the envelope and Rosa's handwriting, and the number that was about to change in a way that was actually real this time. I'm going to pay off Tomas's bills, he told her. I know you are, she said. Not as a compliment. As a simple fact. The kind of thing you say about weather or mathematics. Things that are true regardless of whether you celebrate them. A pause. You eat lunch yet? She asked. He almost laughed. The question was so perfectly her. The immediate pivot back to the practical, the physical, the immediate need in front of her. Because Rosa had always understood that love was not a feeling you described so much as a series of small attentions you paid. Not yet, he said. Go eat something, she said. Something real, not that gas station sandwich. Okay, Mom. I mean it. I know you do. She went back to work. He stayed on the floor a moment longer, phone still warm in his hand, and looked at the refrigerator, at the number on the envelope, at the Texas-shaped magnet holding it in place against the white surface. $14,000. Not for much longer. He got up off the floor. He made himself a real lunch, eggs again, because eggs were what they had, and he ate it standing at the counter in the quiet kitchen while the cartoons played softly through the wall and Austin went about its loud and indifferent business outside the window. And for the first time in 6 months, the weight on his shoulders felt like something he might actually be able to put down. Not yet, but soon. Soon felt, right now, like more than enough. Rosa ironed his shirt the night before. He hadn't asked her to. He had laid it out on the back of his chair before bed. A pale blue button-down he'd bought 2 years ago for a job interview at a logistics company that hadn't called him back. And when he woke up on the morning of April 17, 2023, it was hanging on the doorframe, pressed flat and clean, the collar crisp, every wrinkle removed with the particular thoroughness of a woman who understood that the details people can't see are sometimes the ones that matter most. There was a note pinned to the shoulder seam. Rosa's handwriting, small and looping. You earned this. Now go earn the next one. Mom, he stood in the doorway of his room holding the shirt for a moment, reading the note twice before carefully unpinning it and folding it into the top drawer of his dresser, where he kept the things he didn't want to lose. Tomas was awake when Marcus came into the kitchen, which was unusual. Tomas slept late most mornings, the medication pulling him under longer than a healthy 11-year-old should need. But he was sitting at the table in his pajamas with a bowl of cereal, feet swinging, at watching Marcus come in with the focused attention of someone who had been waiting. You look different, Tomas said. I'm wearing a different shirt. Not the shirt. Tomas studied him with the unsettling perceptiveness that sick children sometimes develop, as though illness had sharpened his ability to read people in compensation for what it had taken from his body. You look like you're walking somewhere instead of just going somewhere. Marcus looked at his little brother, the puffy cheeks, the dark circles under young eyes, the hospital bracelet he still wore from his last treatment, because he said it was lucky, and no one had the heart to argue, and felt the full weight and purpose of everything settle quietly and completely onto his shoulders. Not as a burden this time, as a reason. Eat your cereal, Marcus said. Tomas smiled and ate his cereal. Marcus drove across Austin on Research Boulevard with the windows down and the mid-April morning coming in warm and bright, the city already busy with its relentless construction and coffee and commerce. He passed the Domain Northside sign on Burnett Road, and turned into the familiar approach he had driven hundreds of times, but from a different angle this morning, into a different lot, toward a different entrance than the one he had spent 6 months guarding. He sat in the car for exactly 3 minutes before going in. He used those 3 minutes to read his mother's note one more time from memory, since he had left it in his dresser drawer. He reconstructed it word by word. "You earned this. Now, go earn the next one," and held it in his mind like a compass bearing. Then he got out of the car. Standing at the main entrance of the terrace at Domain Northside, Marcus Delgado felt the particular vertigo of crossing a threshold you have only ever stood outside of. The way the space reorganizes itself around you. The way you reorganize yourself around the space, each adjusting to the new reality of the other. He had opened this door for other people hundreds of times, held it, nodded, moved aside, always on the outside looking at the lobby as a place where other people's important days happened. He went through it. Priya was at the reception desk. She looked up and her smile shifted. Still warm, still professional, but with a new layer in it now. Something genuine underneath the practiced surface. The smile of someone welcoming a person they had been quietly rooting for. "Mr. Delgado," she said. "Chu, welcome." The words landed differently than he expected. Not because they were extraordinary words. They weren't. But because of the mister in front of his name, in this building, spoken by someone who had previously brought him water in a real glass, while he waited to find out if his life was about to change. It had changed, and here he was on the other side of it. His direct supervisor met him in the hallway off the main lobby. Diane Okafor, mid-40s, natural hair, a quality of focused efficiency that reminded Marcus, unexpectedly and warmly, of Rosa. She shook his hand once, firmly, looked him in the eye without theater, and said the most useful thing anyone said to him that entire day. "I know how you got here," Diane told him. "Don't let it be the most interesting thing about you. The parking lot story got you in the door. Well, what you do at your desk keeps you in the building. Understood?" "Understood," Marcus said. He liked her immediately and completely. His desk was near a window on the second floor. When he sat down for the first time and looked out, he realized with a slow, quiet jolt of recognition exactly what he was looking at. Lot B, the same lot, the same painted lines, the same entrance gate where he had stood 6 months ago, keys in hand, redirecting cars he would never afford to drive. The exact patch of asphalt where a silver Ferrari had rolled in on a warm Tuesday evening and a 23-year-old from Del Valle had made the most consequential split-second decision of his life, without knowing it was consequential at all. He looked at it for a long moment. Then he turned his chair slightly. Not away, just angled differently, and facing his computer screen, facing forward, and opened his first work email. The subject line read, "Welcome to the team. Onboarding documents attached." He took a breath, slow and deliberate, the kind Rosa had taught him for moments that mattered. Then Marcus Delgado, operations coordinator, began. At 7:14 p.m. on the night of the Ferrari, 46 minutes before the silver SF-90 Stradale turned into Lot B, Marcus Delgado's phone rang. He was standing between two parked SUVs in the far corner of the staff area, away from the entrance, away from Gerald, away from anyone who might see his face when he answered. He had stepped away because he recognized the number. Dell Children's Medical Center. Billing department. One they had called twice that week already, and he had let both calls go to voicemail because he already knew what they were going to say, and knowing in advance felt, somehow, like a small mercy. This time he answered. The billing coordinator's name was Sheila Montrose. She had a careful voice. Not unkind, genuinely not unkind, but carrying the practiced neutrality of someone who made difficult calls all day and had learned to deliver hard information without apology, because apology made it worse for everyone. She told him that Tomas's upcoming treatment, a critical round of intravenous immunoglobulin therapy, or IVIG, scheduled for the following Tuesday at Dell Children's, was going to be placed on administrative hold unless a payment of $4,800 was received by the close of business the following day. Not a payment plan. Not a partial payment. $4,800 by tomorrow. Marcus stood between the two SUVs in the warm evening air and felt the ground shift under him in the specific, nauseating way it shifts when something you have been dreading becomes something that is actually happening right now. He had $312 in his checking account. He did the math anyway. The desperate, circular math of someone who already knows the answer, but needs to run the numbers one more time, just to be sure. His next paycheck was 5 days away. Lucia had $90 in savings. He knew because she had mentioned it last week, proud of it, putting it toward her UT application fees. Rosa's account was stretched to its absolute limit, had been for months. There was no one to call. There was no cushion. There was no version of the arithmetic that worked. He texted Lucia anyway. "Do you still have that $90 saved?" She replied in 2 minutes. "Yeah, why? Is everything okay?" He put his phone in his pocket without answering. He thought about asking Gerald for a paycheck advance. He thought about it with the specific shame of someone who has never asked for anything and understands exactly what it will cost him. Not money, but the particular dignity that comes from being the person who handles things, who figures it out, who does not need to stand in front of a humorless man in a too-tight polo shirt and say, "I need help." He was still thinking about it, still running the numbers, still searching the impossible arithmetic for a door he hadn't found yet, when he heard the low, quiet purr of an engine at the Lot B entrance. He put his phone in his pocket. He straightened his jacket. He walked to the driver's side window of the silver Ferrari with $4,800 worth of desperation sitting on his chest like a stone. And he looked at the most famous face he had ever seen in person. And he said, "Sir, you can't park there." Not because he wasn't afraid. He was more afraid in that moment than he had been in years. Afraid for Thomas, afraid for Rosa, afraid that the arithmetic would never come out right, and that the number on the refrigerator was just going to keep existing forever, immovable and patient as a wall. Not because the rules mattered more than his brother's health. They didn't. Nothing mattered more than Thomas. Nothing came close. But because in that exact, specific, unrepeatable moment, standing in a parking lot in Austin, with Texas on a warm March evening with his whole life pressing down on him from every direction, being the person Rosa had raised him to be was the only solid ground he had left. It was the one thing the arithmetic could not touch. The one thing that was entirely, unconditionally his. So he stood on it. What Marcus did not know, could not have known, because Rosa had not told him, had not wanted to add one more weight to a back she could see was already bending, was that 3 weeks earlier, on February 22nd, 2023, Rosa had quietly submitted an emergency financial assistance application to the Dell Children's Medical Center Patient Support Fund, a charitable program that helped families cover treatment costs when insurance fell short. She had done it alone, late at night at the kitchen table, and in the same chair where she did all the hard things, under the same light, with the same careful handwriting she used for everything that mattered. She had not told Marcus because she didn't know if it would come through. She didn't want him hoping for something that might not arrive. It arrived. On the morning of March 16th, 2 days after the parking lot, 1 day after the meeting with Jared Koss, Sheila Montrose called back. The Patient Support Fund had approved a partial grant of $3,200. The remaining $1,600 was restructured into a zero-interest payment plan across 12 months, $133 a month, beginning in May. Tomas's IVIG treatment proceeded as scheduled on Tuesday, March 21st, 2023. He responded well. His inflammation markers dropped. His energy began to slowly and cautiously, and with the careful optimism of a family that had learned not to celebrate too early, to return. By June 2023, his condition had stabilized enough that his specialist at Dell Children's used the word manageable, a word that landed in the Delgado kitchen like sunlight coming through a window that had been painted shut. Marcus never told Elon Musk about the $4,800. Not in the meeting. Not after the job offer. Not ever. He didn't tell him because the $4,800 was not the reason he had held the rule. It was the pressure he had been holding it under. And there is a difference, a crucial and defining difference, between the reason you do something and the conditions you do it in. He had done it under the worst conditions of his year, under fear, under exhaustion, and under the weight of a number on a refrigerator, and a sick little brother and a mother who ironed shirts at midnight and never once complained. And still he had done it. That was the part Marcus needed to be true. Not for Elon, not for the internet, not for the video with 4.2 million views, or the comments calling him a legend or an idiot, or both simultaneously. For himself. Because a man needs at least one story about himself that is completely, verifiably, unconditionally his. He kept it in the locked room. He kept it there on purpose. And the locked room stayed locked, except for the journal. On page 14 of the cheap spiral notebook from the Walgreens on William Cannon Drive, in the messy handwriting of a person working something out in real time, Marcus had written one paragraph that said everything the locked room contained. And he had written it at 1:17 a.m. on March 28th, 2 weeks after the incident, 6 days after Tomas's treatment, sitting at the kitchen table in the particular silence of a house where everyone else is finally asleep, and you are finally, briefly, alone with the truest version of yourself. He never showed it to anyone. He never intended to, but he read it sometimes, on hard nights, on slow shifts, on the mornings when the refrigerator number felt immovable again, and the world felt indifferent, and the distance between Del Valle and everything else felt very wide. He read it and remembered who he had been in that parking lot. And it was enough. It was always enough. On March 14th, 2024, exactly 1 year to the day, Marcus was working late. Not because he had to, because he wanted to. Because somewhere in the past 12 months he had discovered, quietly and without announcement, that work felt different when it belonged to you, when you had earned the desk and the window and the business cards with your name on them through something real, something that had cost you something real in return. The office was empty. The building had settled into its nighttime stillness, the particular hush of a place that has finished being busy and is simply existing now, breathing slowly in the dark. The cleaning crew had come and gone. The hallway lights had dimmed to their overnight setting. Marcus sat alone at his desk with a half-cold cup of coffee and a spreadsheet he was nearly finished with. The screen's blue light, the only brightness in the room. He heard it before he saw it. The low, quiet purr of a hybrid engine moving slowly through the lot below. He knew the sound. And he had known it for exactly 1 year. He looked up from his screen, looked out the window. Lot B, silver SF90 Stradale. Same plates. Not a scratch on it. The kind of clean that costs money just to maintain. Moving slowly, deliberately, through the entrance gate and into the reserved space with the quiet certainty of something returning to where it belongs. The engine stopped. The door opened. Elon Musk stepped out into the mild Austin night, plain jacket, no effort to impress anyone, and stood for a moment beside the car with his hands in his pockets, looking up at the building the way people sometimes look at things they own. Not with pride exactly, but with a kind of quiet acknowledgement. I know what this is. I know what it took. Then he looked up. 3rd floor, 2nd window from the left, and the one with the blue light still on at 9:47 p.m. He looked directly at it. Marcus raised his hand. A small, unhurried wave. The wave of a man who was no longer surprised by his own life, but had not yet stopped being grateful for it. Elon raised his hand back. Then he turned and walked through the entrance, and his footsteps crossed the lobby below, and the building absorbed him the way buildings absorb the people who belong inside them. Marcus watched the empty lot for a moment after he was gone. Lot B, quiet and still, the painted lines bright under the security lights, the entrance gate standing open the way it always stood open for the man whose name was on the deed. He turned back to his spreadsheet, finished it, saved it. Then he opened his desk drawer, the top one, or the one where he kept the things he didn't want to lose, and looked at what was inside. Rosa's note, unfolded and slightly worn at the creases now from being read too many times. You earned this. Now go earn the next one. The business card from Jared Koss, its edges softened with age. A photograph of Tomas from June 2023, taken the day his specialist used the word manageable. Sitting up straight in a chair at Dell Children's Medical Center, no blanket, no puffiness in his face, grinning at the camera with the full and unguarded joy of a boy who had gotten some good news and was not yet old enough to be cautious about showing it. And beneath all of it, folded into a small square, a piece of notepaper in handwriting Marcus had memorized the moment he read it. 6 words, no signature, just an initial. Good call on Lot B, CE. He had found it on his desk on his very first morning, sitting under his welcome packet, unattached to any envelope, as though it had simply appeared there, placed by someone who had access to the building at any hour, who knew where the new coordinator would be sitting, who had decided that some things deserved to be acknowledged privately and without ceremony. Marcus refolded it carefully along its original creases, put it back beneath the photograph of Thomas, closed the drawer. He picked up his coffee, cold now, had been cold for an hour, and drank the last of it anyway, because Rosa had raised him not to waste things, and because some habits were worth keeping, regardless of how much your salary had changed. He packed up his bag, turned off his monitor, stood at the window one last time before leaving, looking out at Lot B in the quiet Austin night, at the empty space where a silver Ferrari had been and wasn't anymore, at the painted lines and the open gate, and the unremarkable patch of asphalt that had, on one ordinary Tuesday evening, turned out to be the exact right place to take a stand. He thought about the journal, about page 14, about the paragraph he had written at 1:17 a.m. when the house was finally quiet, and he was finally alone with the truest version of himself. He hadn't written in it in months, not because the hard nights had stopped entirely, but because the weight had redistributed itself into something more bearable, something that felt less like drowning and more like swimming, still effortful, but moving forward. Tomas had started back at school part-time in September 2023. He had joined the robotics club. Why he had made two friends named David and Preeti, who came over on Saturdays and ate Rosa's cooking with the devoted enthusiasm of children who recognized excellent food when they encountered it. Lucia had been accepted to UT Austin, engineering, full scholarship. She had screamed so loud when the email arrived that Tomas had come running from his room thinking something was wrong, and the look on his face when he realized it was the opposite of wrong. That pure, unguarded relief dissolving instantly into joy was something Marcus kept alongside the photograph and the business card and the note in the drawer of things he didn't want to lose. Rosa had cut her shifts from double to single in November 2023. She had not announced it. She had simply come home at a reasonable hour one Tuesday evening and made dinner for all four of them, and sat at the table and eaten it without rushing, without the particular exhausted tension of a woman who was always already thinking about the next shift, the next bill, the next thing that needed handling. Marcus had noticed. He hadn't said anything. Neither had she. They had just eaten dinner together, all four of them, in the small kitchen on Decker Lane in Valet, Texas, with the refrigerator behind them and the Texas-shaped magnet, and the envelope that now held a piece of paper with a different number on it. A number so small it barely justified the envelope. And the evening had been quiet and warm and entirely, remarkably ordinary. Which was, Marcus had come to understand, the whole point. While the extraordinary thing was never the Ferrari. It was never the viral video or the 4.2 million views or the business card or the $72,000 salary, or even the 6-word note in the top drawer. The extraordinary thing was an ordinary Tuesday evening, a family eating dinner, a boy getting better, a mother coming home before dark. That was what the parking lot had been for. That was what all of it had been for. Marcus turned off the office light and took the elevator down and walked through the lobby where Priya had once brought him water in a real glass, while he waited to find out if his life was about to change. It had changed. He walked out through the main entrance, not the side door, not the staff exit he had used for 6 months, but the main entrance, and the one with the frosted glass, and the two planters with the perfectly trimmed spherical shrubs, and into the mild Austin night. The air smelled like spring, like the city warming up again after winter, like possibility reconsidering itself, like the specific and unrepeatable evening of March 14th, 2024, which was just another Thursday to most people and something else entirely to Marcus Delgado. He walked to his car, not the 2009 Honda Civic with the cracked left mirror. He had replaced that in August, not with anything flashy, just a reliable used Toyota Camry in dark gray that started every time and didn't rattle on the highway, and had both mirrors intact, which felt, after everything, like a form of abundance. He sat in it for a moment before starting the engine, hands on the wheel, eyes forward. In the parking lot behind him, Lot B was quiet and empty, and lit and ordinary. Just a patch of asphalt with painted lines and a sign that said "Reserved," and an entrance gate that stood open for the people who belonged there. Marcus started the engine, drove home through Austin, through the construction and the coffee shops and the billboards and the city that was always converting something old into something new, always building on top of what came before, always in the process of becoming something it hadn't quite been yet. He drove past the domain sign on Burnett Road, past the Highway 71 turnoff, past the corner store on Elroy Road, where the man behind the counter knew everyone by name, and the cold drinks were kept in a chest freezer, and the evenings came in slow and golden over the rooftops of Del Valle. He pulled into the driveway on Decker Lane. The kitchen light was on. Rosa's car was already there. Through the window, he could see the warm yellow light and the shapes of people moving inside. Lucia probably at the table with her laptop, Thomas probably saying something sideways and funny that would land 3 seconds after he said it. Rosa probably at the stove with her back to the room, listening to everything without appearing to listen to anything. Marcus sat in the driveway for a moment, the engine ticking as it cooled, looking at the lit window of the small tan house where he had grown up carrying things without being asked to. He wasn't carrying less now. The weight hadn't disappeared. It never entirely disappears. Not for people like Marcus, not for families like his, but it had changed shape. It had become something he recognized and understood, and could move with, rather than something that moved him. He got out of the car, walked up to the front door, opened it, and went home. And that is the story of Marcus Delgado, a young man from Del Valle, Texas, who stood on the only solid ground he had left, on an ordinary Tuesday evening, in an ordinary parking lot, and changed his entire life without knowing that's what he was doing. He didn't have a plan. He didn't have a backup. He just had the person his mother raised him to be. And it was enough. It is always enough. Now, before you go, drop a comment right now and tell us where you are watching from. Whether you are in Austin, Texas, or halfway across the world, we want to know where this story found you today. It always amazes us how far a single story can travel. If this made you feel something, if Marcus and Rosa and little Thomas stayed with you even for a moment, do one simple thing. Hit that like button right now. Not for us. Do it because stories about real kindness, real struggle, and real integrity deserve to be seen by more people. Every single like puts this story in front of someone who might need it today. And if you are not subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button and join this community. Because we find these stories, the ones the headlines miss, the ones happening in parking lots and hospital stairwells and small tan houses on quiet streets, and we bring them to you every single week. Because the world has enough noise. What it needs more of is this. Now go click on the video appearing on your screen right now. We promise. It is worth your time. We will see you there.